After more than 700 episodes, it's no surprise that Springfield has been blurring with reality, as The Simpsons has more or less predicted major events in the worlds of politics, disease, and deep-sea disasters. In the Season 2 episode, Itchy and Scratchy and Marge, which originally aired in December 1990, The Simpsons matriarch goes on a censorship crusade to clean up cartoons. But then she abandons the cause after her fellow crusaders try to cover up Michelangelo's David when the sculpture visits a museum in Springfield. A similar real-life incident played out a little more than a decade later.
Wait a minute. Aren't you Marge Simpson the Wacko?
Yes and no.
In 2001, a shop in Lake Alfred, Florida called Fountain and Falls placed a small replica of David outside its front door. While this work is widely considered a masterpiece, it's also anatomically correct and does feature a man's genitals, so it was understandable when not everyone was happy with this decision. In particular, Jeannie Johnson, the owner of a nearby barbershop, complained to City Hall about it. City officials then asked Fountain and Falls to cover the statue's crotch with a loincloth, and shop manager Chuck Cole ultimately agreed to do so. The kids of Springfield have a grand adventure with their rival town of Shelbyville in Lemon of Troy, a Season 6 episode that originally aired in May 1995. The plot revolves around the efforts to recover the town's beloved lemon tree, which was planted by settlers many years ago. Alas, those villains from Shelbyville ripped it right out of the ground. Plenty of Simpsons viewers surely thought that the idea of stealing a lemon tree was absurd on its face. One real-life person inclined to agree was surely Hannah Cook Wallace of Madison, Wisconsin. That's because in the summer of 2011, the huge Meyer lemon tree that Cook Wallace kept in a planter on her front porch for 20 years was also unceremoniously stolen.
It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
In Homer's Phobia, a Season 8 episode from 1997, the Simpsons befriend a shop owner named John, who's voiced by filmmaker John Waters. Homer loves this guy, until he finds out that he's gay. Eventually though, the Simpson patriarch gets over his fear when John saves him from being gored to death by a group of reindeer.
Well, Homer, I won your respect, and all I had to do was save your life. Now, if every gay man could just do the same, you'd be set.
A very similar lesson was learned by real-life Birmingham, England resident Baljit Kunar in 2010. Kunar lived next door to Bryn and James Tudor, who in 2005 became the first same-sex couple in the city to obtain a civil partnership. Kunar had a history of harassing his neighbors, that is, until they saved his life. His house was on fire early one morning, and the smell of smoke awakened James, who managed to get Kunar and his family to safety. While attending Colonel Tex's traveling carnival in the 1998 episode Bart Carney, the kids of Springfield are transfixed by a cutting-edge virtual reality game that allows them to pretend that they're doing yard work like trimming hedges and raking leaves. It seemed utterly bizarre at the time, but this was a different era of video games. Some of the most popular titles from that year include the likes of Half-Life, Metal Gear Solid, and Banjo-Kazooie. This is all to say none of them featured yard work as significant features of their gameplay. If Bart Carney had instead arrived a decade later, it wouldn't have seemed quite so odd. That's because 2009 saw the release of the similar Facebook-based game FarmVille, which went on to rack up more than $1 billion in in-game purchases. That puts a whole new spin on Cowabunga. In the early 1990s, Siegfried and Roy were staples of the Las Vegas entertainment scene. The German-American duo's show was one part magical spectacle and one part animal act that included beautiful white lions and white tigers. The Simpsons characters of Gunther and Ernst are obvious parodies of Siegfried and Roy, and in the 1993 episode Springfield, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, they come to town to perform in Mr. Burns' casino along with their white tiger, Anastasia. Anastasia is humiliated as she wears a dumb hat and rides a unicycle. She then dreams about her old life in the jungle, which ended when Gunther and Ernst shot her with a tranquilizer dart. She then snaps back to reality and ragefully attacks Gunther and Ernst, ripping them to shreds. Tragically, Roy Horn suffered a very similar fate in real life. During a 2003 show at the Mirage in Las Vegas, a 300-pound white tiger bit and mauled him, resulting in severe injuries and massive blood loss. The Mirage closed the show in the wake of the incident. It took Horn months to recover, though he was eventually able to walk again. Treehouse of Horror is one of the most beloved traditions in Simpsons history, even though these horrors can sometimes be a little too real for comfort. Treehouse of Horror 19, for example, aired during the show's 20th season, right before the 2008 US presidential election. The episode opens with a gag in which Homer attempts to vote numerous times for Barack Obama with an electronic voting machine, only for his vote to automatically be swapped for Republican nominee John McCain. He's then sucked inside the machine and killed so that he can't tell anyone about what he's discovered.
This doesn't happen in America! Maybe Ohio, but not in America!
While most Americans are probably exhausted of hearing about unfounded complaints about voting machines stealing elections, there was actually one instance of something like this genuinely happening. In 2012, a machine in Pennsylvania had to be taken back to maintenance after one user found that it was erroneously recording votes for President Obama as votes for Republican nominee Mitt Romney. There seemed to be a problem with the machine's touchscreen calibration, causing it to register touch commands in the wrong location. It's been said that the Season 9 episode Lisa's Sax, which originally aired in 1997, was somehow able to predict the existence of the Ebola virus before it was publicly known. However, this is actually a case where The Simpsons' powers of prognostication have been a little overstated. However, the episode does deserve some credit for being ahead of the curve, as it includes a scene where Marge reads from a book called Curious George and the Ebola Virus. Though it had yet to enter the wider American consciousness, the virus had been discussed publicly thanks to Richard Preston's 1994 book The Hot Zone, which was based on an article he wrote for The New Yorker. Considering that many Simpsons writers in early seasons were Harvard University alums, it's not too hard to imagine that at least one of them had a subscription to The New Yorker, or were otherwise aware of the virus when general audiences weren't. Nevertheless, none of this takes away from how eerie it was for Simpsons fans when the virus did finally arrive in America in 2014. Simply put, it makes sense that the memory of Marge's book would stick out as another case of the show predicting the future. In 2013, former National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden leaked evidence that the NSA was using a loophole to spy on ordinary American citizens. According to Snowden, this even went as far as some of their agents reading the emails of their former and current romantic partners and stalking them online. The details of the scandal are well known today, but back when The Simpsons movie was released in theaters in July 2007, not as many members of the public were fully aware of the extent to which the authorities were able to access their private info. So while this wasn't exactly a prediction that came out of nowhere, the Springfield gang was still a little ahead of the curve. The plot of the movie involves Springfield being quarantined and the Simpsons going on the run. At one point, Marge jokes about how it's not as if the government is listening to everyone's random conversations, but then the scene then cuts to a room full of NSA agents who are eavesdropping on all manner of normal people. When one of them manages to hone in on the Simpsons, he shouts,
Hey, everybody, I found one! The government actually found someone we're looking for! Yeah, baby, yeah!
In some ways, it's more impressive when The Simpsons is able to preempt a shocking world event by a matter of months rather than decades, as was the case with the FIFA corruption scandal. In the Season 25 episode, You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, which aired in March 2014, Homer is suddenly considered a viable soccer official by FIFA thanks to its recently tarnished reputation. Soon after, that tarnished reputation was very much part of the actual FIFA's reality. In May 2015, 7 of the soccer organization's officials were alleged to have taken over $150 million in bribes over the course of more than 2 decades. Like some other examples on this list, a likely explanation for The Simpsons supposedly being able to predict this event comes down to the writers probably being more aware of the topic before it widely entered the public consciousness. For example, an earlier incident that could have caught their attention was the revelation in 2012 that FIFA president João Avalanche took millions of dollars worth of bribes during his term. And it's also noteworthy that this episode also accurately foresaw that Germany would be the next winner of the World Cup.
I've never seen the Brazilians so depressed.
As far as plots for zany animated sitcoms go, a pandemic isn't that far out of left field to be counted as a prediction in and of itself. But The Simpsons took it one step further in a way that freakishly mirrored reality a few decades later. In the Season 4 episode Marge in Chains, which originally aired in 1993, a virus known as the Osaka flu comes to Springfield, causing chaos as the town's citizens hopelessly try to protect themselves. At one point, they knock over a truck they believe to be transporting a cure, but instead it's carrying killer bees, which then spread throughout the town and only increase the panic. In the real world, a species of 2-inch-long bees, known as the Asian giant hornet, or more colloquially, the murder hornet, made it to America in 2020 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Though these bees weren't necessarily deadly to humans, they did have the potential to decimate honeybee habitats, and they certainly caused widespread panic.
Not the bees! Ah!
Season 5's Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy, which originally aired in 1994, is another case of The Simpsons presenting events that could and eventually did happen, and doing so decades before the real-life version. During one scene, news anchor Kent Brockman is covering the craze surrounding the new Malibu Stacy doll, which is a parody of Barbie. Then he also mentions one other seemingly vital bit of news rather quickly.
Oh, and the president was arrested for murder. More on that tomorrow night.
In the context of the episode, The Simpsons doesn't seem to be making any kind of political statement. Instead, the joke is more that Springfield is so distracted by Malibu Stacy that the arrest of a head of state barely registers as interesting. Anyone who lived through 2023 knows this puzzling feeling all too well. In August of that year, former President Donald Trump was arrested for various felony charges that included racketeering. This happened less than a month after Barbie hit theaters and became a worldwide sensation that dominated pop culture for the rest of the year. In the season 18 episode, Please Homer, Don't Hammer 'Em, which originally aired in 2006, the Simpsons family head out to a rundown mall. While the story only spends a few minutes in the dilapidated environment, there is notable inclusion of an empty JCPenney storefront, abandoned and left to rot. This image of retail decline returned to plenty of fans' minds in 2020 when the real JCPenney filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Of course, a major factor in this decision was the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced multiple businesses across the world to close. The company has since been trying to lower its financial liabilities and restructure its business model so that it can emerge from bankruptcy once more as a welcome retail option for families affected by inflation. It's also even spending a significant amount of cash on remodeling stores, hopefully leaving them in a better state than the one at the Springfield Mall. People across the globe were captivated by the story of OceanGate's Titan submersible in 2023. The aquatic vehicle was lost at sea after it attempted to descend to the wreck of the Titanic. After debris was discovered, it was determined that the sub had suffered a catastrophic implosion that tragically took the lives of all aboard. In the midst of the media frenzy, many Simpsons fans began sharing clips from season 17's Homer's paternity coot, which originally aired in 2006. In one scene, Homer gets lost while exploring a shipwreck and piloting a submersible that has a similar design as the Titan. The obvious explanation for this supposed prediction is that in a show as long-running as The Simpsons, a submarine plot was bound to happen at some point. However, what makes this particular coincidence even more fascinating is that Simpsons writer-producer Mike Reiss was actually a passenger on the OceanGate submersible during a previous voyage. Reiss recalled some technical issues on his journey as he told the New York Post, "Death is always lurking. It's always in the back of your mind. Before you even get on the boat, there's a long, long waiver that mentions death 3 times on page 1.
It is always in the back of your head that this is dangerous.
On the surface, the Apple Vision Pro is like many virtual reality headsets that came before it. Its main feature is an ability to strap an interactive screen to your face so as to immerse yourself more completely in whatever game you're playing or movie you're watching. From that point of view, there's nothing particularly special about The Simpsons predicting the wide adoption of a VR headset in the season 28 episode Friends and Family, which aired in 2016. But what makes it more noteworthy is how it kind of predicted how the Vision Pro would stand out from the crowd. The Vision Pro comes with a travel mode, which was meant primarily for planes, but some users took to using it while out and about in public, which annoyed a lot of people. As antisocial as strapping a screen to your face might seem, the intent is apparently for them to be treated like eyewear. And on The Simpsons, the town of Springfield almost unanimously adopts VR headsets in exactly the same way, with residents stumbling into light poles and traffic thanks to their obscured vision. In 2024, legendary musician Paul McCartney responded to a fan 6 decades after she initially reached out to him. Back when the Beatles first arrived in America in 1963, a Brooklyn resident named Adrian professed her unmatched admiration for McCartney. 6 decades later, while he was opening a photo gallery at the Brooklyn Museum, he invited Adrian to the show in a video posted to his Instagram. He did something similar a decade earlier when he belatedly responded to a tape recording sent by 2 Essex women in 1963. Long before McCartney sent those long overdue responses, his former bandmate Ringo Starr responded to his own piece of decades-old fan mail from Marge Simpson. In the season 2 episode, Brush with Greatness, which aired in 1991, Starr voiced a fictionalized version of himself who helps Marge rediscover her love for art by finally writing to her to let her know that he loved a painting she did of him 20 years earlier. But outside of Springfield, the story was a little different. In 2008, Starr politely asked his real-life fans to stop sending him fan mail by giving them a firm cutoff date. Specifically, if anything arrived after October 20th, it would remain unsigned and end up thrown away.
I'm warning you with peace and love, but I have too much to do. So no more fan mail. Thank you, thank you.
Does something count as a prediction if it inspired people to recreate something that otherwise wouldn't exist? That's for you to decide, though we think that The Simpsons deserves at least some credit for proposing a collaboration that surely nobody else had thought of beforehand. In Season 7's Homerpalooza, which originally aired in 1996, American hip-hop group Cypress Hill find themselves unexpectedly performing with the London Symphony Orchestra. Then, almost 30 years later, the real Cypress Hill actually did hook up with the LSO for a one-night-only concert, which was largely inspired by Homerpalooza Homerpalooza. As Cypress Hill's Be Real told the BBC in 2024, it's been something that we've talked about for many years since the Simpsons episode first aired, so it's very special for us. And it's coming off the heels of our 30th anniversary for our Black Sunday album. The fact that the performance was at the world-famous Royal Albert Hall in London made it all the more special for the group. They even invited Peter Frampton, who also appeared in Homerpalooza, to join them for this collaboration.
Cypress Hill steals my orchestra and Sonic Youth's in my cooler!
The most recent example of The Simpsons getting the future just a little too right comes from Season 11's Bart to the Future, which originally aired in March 2000. The plot involves Bart receiving a vision of what his life in Springfield will be like 40 years in the future, during which he learns that his sister Lisa will one day become the President of the United States. And she made a particular sartorial choice that brought this episode renewed attention a couple of decades later. In July 2024, President Joe Biden formally declined to seek re-election, instead endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic Party nominee. And this brings things back to the Simpsons version of reality, as President Lisa wears an outfit nearly identical to the one that Harris wore at President Biden's inauguration in 2021. Simpsons writer Al Jean responded on social media, calling this one prediction that he was proud to be a part of.